The Nihali language is a language spoken by around 2,000 people in villages across the border between the Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh states of Western India. There are around 5,000 ethnic Nihali people, but many of these speak other languages, and it's thought that even of those who speak Nihali, all of them perhaps are at least bilingual. They generally speak the Korku language, but with many also speaking Hindi or Marathi. The language is particularly interesting for containing an incredibly high proportion of loanwords from surrounding languages, with only around 20 to 25% of vocabulary being of native stock, the remainder being taken from Korku, Hindi, Marathi, Dravidian languages and perhaps traces of other languages. These native words, particularly those parts of the core vocabulary, are apparently unrelated to any other language family, so Nihali is considered to be an isolate, perhaps the last remaining member of an otherwise lost family. Given the high poverty and multilingualism of its speakers, the language is critically endangered, and many linguists are doing work on this fascinating language, such as K.S. Nagaraja, whose grammar has been fundamental in writing this video. A link to buy it is available in the description, and I have found it available on a number of other sites. Nihali has 40 phonemes, 30 consonants and 10 vowels. As is usual for the languages of India, it features a set of retroflex consonants and series of aspirated and murmured stops, in addition to voiced and voiceless. The consonants are M, N, N, P, T, K, Ch, K, P, T, H, Ch, K, B, D, D, J, G, B, D, R, J, G, S, H, R, R, L, W, Y. The alveolar nasal has retroflex and velar allophones before the corresponding stops, and the alveolar fricative is palatal or postalveolar before front vowels, except in some loan words. The labial approximant is labiovelar, word finally, and Nagaraja describes it as somewhat stronger, word initially and between vowels. Likewise, the palatal approximant is weak, word finally and next to consonants, and stronger elsewhere. Word finally, stops may be realised as unreleased. The vowels are I, U, U, E, O, A. Some loans contain nasalised vowels, although this is not a native distinction, and is thus considered phonetic rather than phonemic. The distribution of long and short vowels is somewhat sporadic, and there can be some variation, but the vowels A and O consistently contrast between long and short, and minimal pairs are present, so they are considered to be separate phonemes. The language allows clusters of a consonant and a glide in the syllable onset, and sometimes allows clusters in the coda of either a nasal and a stop, a palatal approximant and a stop, or a palatal approximant and nasal. This makes the maximal syllable type CCVCC, although clusters rarely occur in both the onset and the coda. Nihali is generally not written by its speakers, but occasionally a local system such as Devanagari may be used. In documentation, a Latin transcription inspired by Devanagari romanization is generally employed. In this video I will follow this convention and mark long vowels with a macron, retroflexes with an underdot, and aspirates with a following H. The palatal nasal will be an N with a tilde, and palatal affricates will be C and J. Nihali makes a distinction between animate and inanimate nouns. In general, only animate nouns can inflect for all three numbers, singular, dual, and plural. Countable inanimate nouns can only take the plural suffix and don't inflect for the dual number. Non-countable inanimate or mass nouns take quantifiers instead of inflecting for plurality. There is some flexibility in this system though. Some inanimate nouns, especially in certain contexts, occasionally take the dual suffix, and some mass nouns may take plural marking rather than classifiers. Nouns inflect for case. There are at least 4 distinct cases, but there's a lot of syncretism, where the markers are the same for multiple cases. There's also not much distinction made between case suffixes and postpositions, so it's hard to tell what's a case and what isn't, and the sources I've referenced disagree. The 5 most common, however, are the nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, and ablative. The genitive and accusative share a suffix, the dative also has instrumental and locative meaning, and the ablative also has associative meaning. The accusative is marked by 0 for inanimate nouns, and a suffix with n for animate nouns. Postpositions are often written in the same manner as case suffixes, making them yet harder to distinguish, but in this video I will only append these cases, and write postpositions separately. Agentive nouns can be derived from verb and noun roots with a suffix. This suffix can be replaced with another to make the new noun plural. Most Nihali nouns, which describe people or animals, are assumed to be male by default. They can be converted to female by suffixing the word for woman. When used with professions, the compound can refer to the wife of the male counterpart, but if a direct female counterpart is intended, this can generally be inferred by context. To derive human nouns from inanimates, a male suffix also exists. Nihali adjectives come before their nouns. They can be placed after a noun without a copula to act as a predicate, assigning an attribute to the subject. Unlike in English, Nihali doesn't have dedicated comparative or superlative forms of adjectives. Instead, constructions using the ablative are employed, meaning something like, this thing is good compared to that thing, and the best thing of all things. Nagaraja discusses 4 different types of adverb: time, manner, place, and frequency. Of these, those which describe time, manner, and place are more commonly nominal, often derived from nouns, with some form of postposition or case marking. Some frequency adverbs are also derived from nouns, but there are also some other parts of speech and a number of simple, underived forms. A number of adverbs can be reduplicated, either as intensification or to derive them from adjectives. Reduplication can also occur for other word classes, such as adjectives, nouns, and verbs. Nihali verbs are fairly simple, only conjugating for a few categories, but they stack agglutinatively. Verbs are usually cited in their infinitive form. For most verbs, this uses the suffix be, which is also the imperative marker. Unlike the norm of Indo-European languages, verbs in Nihali don't inflect for person or number, meaning verb forms are constant regardless of subject. There are 3 suffixes which mark tense: past, present, and future. These suffixes aren't always used. Some verbs don't take them, and they don't appear in some constructions, or in conjunction with some other suffixes. However, some suffixes, such as the remote past dan, can coexist with them to convey different meanings. Aspect is an area which was really unclear in my research. It seems to be a slightly weird system which works in conjunction with the tense markers to convey various meanings. I won't provide a table of suffixes for this, but I will explain what I found. The progressive aspect can be formed with the suffix kini. In the present, this is added directly to the verb root. To form the past tense, an additional suffix dan is added onto this. There's likewise a suffix kidani, which kini may have been derived from, although the sources don't mention this. In the present tense, it functions identically to kini. It also converts to the past tense in a similar way, although instead conveys a perfect progressive meaning. The present tense form can also be used with adverbs to express the future. The gan suffix can be added to the past tense stem of a verb to create a past perfect meaning. It can also be added to the present stem to create some sort of past potential or conditional meaning, such as would or could have. There are two main verbal moods, the indicative and the imperative. Nagaraja also mentions an interrogative mood, but doesn't provide many details. The imperative takes separate markers for positive and negative, and can also be expressed by the second person singular indicative, or rarely by what appears to be a causative imperative suffix. As mentioned, a negative imperative can be formed with the biji suffix. Negatives can also be formed in the indicative by various markers. Where a verb is negated, it doesn't inflect for tense, so there are different negative markers used for different tenses, although they only show a contrast between past and non-past, so the same negative is used for both the present and the future. There's also a marker, hayum, used for unfulfilled expectation, so could be translated as the English not yet. The non-past and imperative negatives can both occur before or after a verb. Where they come before, their final vowel can be dropped and the remaining consonant assimilates to the verb root. As with nouns, personal pronouns occur in three numbers: singular, dual, and plural. No gender distinctions are made in any of the pronouns, and they don't inflect for case. Demonstrative pronouns distinguish between proximal and distal, and the distal forms also distinguish visible and non-visible. The visible distal forms are derived from the proximals by use of an infix. When occurring straight before a noun, some demonstratives can reduce and attach on to it. There are a number of interrogative pronouns, often with somewhat overlapping meanings. Each one is built on one of two bases, an M-type base and an N-type base. In his grammar, Nagaraja provides this table, which summarises the non-personal pronouns, including a number which I haven't mentioned or gone over in much detail. It was mentioned earlier in the video that Nihali uses a significant number of loanwords. Unusually, this also extends to the numeral system. Only the number 1 is definitely native, and seems to bear no relation to nearby words. The number 2 is similar to several Dravidian languages. 3 and 4 are from Canada, or perhaps another Dravidian language, and the remaining numbers up to 10 are Indo-Aryan, akin to those of Hindi. Some numbers above 10 may come from Korku. The number 1 also has a unique ordinal number, but all other numbers use the Hindi words for this role. Nihali uses an SOV word order. The subject of a sentence comes first, followed by the object, and the clause ends with the verb. An SVO word order is also allowed in subordinate clauses, which usually don't take any introductory elements, such as pronouns. So this shift in word order allows the subordinate to be identified. An order of OSV can also occur to shift the emphasis of the sentence. Case marking here prevents a confusion of meaning. The word imni, meaning to be, is usually not used. Noun phrases alone are enough to form a sentence identifying an entity or its qualities. The verb be is used in existential sentences, however. Modifiers of nouns come before their head, and numerals come at the start of a noun phrase, even before modifiers. Possessors come before their possessees. Nai, Dor, Chogum, Jan, Gortari, Dedda, Nango, Ondor, Kogo, Berko, Peng, Huri, Jiki, Pakto, Chon, Chorto, Menge, Chigam, Pago, Bil, Rata, Hardo, Nila, Popor, Pander, Mai, Aba, Gol, Ato, Pirjo, Nana, Napium, Chachav, Mama, Karyom, Sokra, Chopo, Baji, Chopo, Sakria, Huja, Patko, Racho, Kav, Racho, Kande, Masur, Chai, Tandur, Mircha, Kere, Karela, Alu, Nimbu, Oro, Birti, Ir, Moto, Nalko, Paso, Saha, Sato, Ako, Nav, Decho, Imni, Hembe, Dohobe, Delenbe, Kamaibe, Pertebe, Tiebe, Kappobe, Merbe, Nejumunan, Engejumu Parwati, Neminga con Pato Kidani, Enge Awar Iti Agto Uti Darki, Jo Awarki Eridan, Minkika Erbici, Enge Perjonila, Jo Rajan Biskut Kieki Danidan, Kawabe Balla, Chachom Kaki Bete, Neki Miyan Hona, Eteki Chai Bebe, Angako Hautinkia Kabe, Jo Hot Hago, Nenusan, Jo Masto Bete, Daiki Nalko Kogo Ta Bettidan, Nedelenko Joppo, Jo Kapoka, La Sabnanakon Hubananata, Awar Kigonich Joppo Imni, Jo Etena Apakamai,